WaterWhispers Hills. Hi, sweeties. Welcome back to my channel, TheWaterwhispers. I'm so happy to see you again. And before I'm going to start with telling you some stories from my past, I really want to thank you so much for the amazing comments and also the amount of requests that I received on my inaudible, unintelligible ASMR video that I published 2 videos ago. So for this video again as well, I am actually writing down requests that I receive from you guys. So if you have a request, please comment down below this video, and if you see someone's request that you really like, please like that comment, because I'm trying to film videos that a lot of you want to see. So today I am having a whisper ramble video for you, in which I'm going to tell you the story of how I got into aquariums and fish. Having aquariums is a big hobby of mine. Not all of you might know that, depending on how long you've been following me and which videos you've seen of mine so far. And last year in February, I released a new video every day for 30 days in a row. And one of the themes for Thursday was, I think it was Story Thursday, or was it Story Sunday? I can't remember, but this video is going to be very similar to that. So I will be sharing some personal stories with you on how I got into aquariums and how I got into the hobby of having shrimp and fish. So with that being said, don't forget to subscribe if you like my channel, and if you want to see more videos, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and comment down below for your feedback and your requests, since I read all of the comments. So without further ado, let's get started now with the story. So, I think I must have been around 5 to 6 years old when I got into having fish as pets for the first time. My dad had this little box full with different types of fishing supplies, which he inherited from his grandpa. So when I was around, I think I must have been 6 years old, he showed it to me. He even had the fishing rod from my grandpa, and he gave it to me. So I was able to use the old fishing box and the fishing rod from my grandpa. And since I grew up in the Netherlands, that's where I'm from, there are so many canals everywhere. So we had this one canal, which is called the Leidsevaart. And this canal was literally on the other side of the block of houses where we lived. So it was about a 5-minute walk to get there. So my dad bought himself another fishing rod, and we decided to go fishing. I grew up with boys usually like. So I liked cars, I liked trucks, I liked motorcycles, I liked fishing, and I loved catching bugs and, all sorts of animals that a lot of girls were kind of freaked out about, but I loved them. So we went fishing. I have to admit, when I caught my first fish, it was a very, very small fish. It was about that size, and it was a completely silver looking fish with red fins on the top and the bottom and the tail as well. So that went on for a while after I got the hang of fishing, and I wasn't scared anymore to hold them because they're so slippery. My dad and I started fishing more and more, and I think we used to fish about maybe at least 2 times a week. So that's how I got into catching fish. I did not think about, animal cruelty at that age of like, oh, the hook gets into the lip of the fish and all that. I only started caring about that when I wasn't a kid anymore, pretty much. But at the time, I didn't know. So I continued catching fish, and I really wanted to have a dog when I was a kid, or a rabbit. But because I was so young, my dad didn't think that I could, take the responsibility of taking care of an animal. And since my dad wasn't always well, he did not want to take up the responsibility on him if I wouldn't do it. So I was not really allowed to have any pets other than bugs and fish and salamanders and frogs that I could catch in the wild. So I ended up having an aquarium in my room, and that's where my hobby of fish started. One of the reasons my channel is called TheWaterWhispers is because I've always had something with water creatures and water, and this story stems back to the origins of my channel name as well, a little bit. So that's related to my channel name. So yeah, there I was, 6-year-old Ilse with an aquarium in my bedroom, and I had the fish sitting on a shelf close to my bed, and that's where I had like different types of fish that I'd caught. They weren't very large or anything. They were just, baby fish. They were small fish. And, oh man, when I was a kid, this one day, I got the scare of my life. I had my aquarium in the bedroom. It wasn't covered or anything. I never had any fish jumping out or anything like that. But we did have a lot of cats in the area. I wonder if you can feel this one coming. So one day, the window of my dad's bedroom was open, and a cat came through the window and ate some of my fish. I was so traumatized when I was about 6. Maybe I was a year older by then, maybe 7 years old. I was so traumatized, oh my goodness, because I wanted to check up on my fish after I came back from school. So I ran up the stairs and I started yelling on the top of my lungs because there were dead fish on the floor, and it was so sad. So my dad tried to calm me down, saying, tomorrow we can catch new fish. So that's what we did. And I guess my dad and I both learned our lesson, because after that we made sure that we covered the aquarium with that thick plastic. So fish. The aquarium was in the front room, and the cat climbed into the house, in the bedroom beside me. Must have smelt it or something. But yeah, that happened when I was a kid. And then there are so many more things that I can tell you about this period of my life, but let's move on to when I was also around 7 years old. When I was 7 years old, I caught frogs for the first time. Not too far away from our house, we had this lake, or it's more like a pond, like a big pond. And there were a lot of fish in there. You were not actually allowed to catch fish there. But when it was the season, there used to be so many little frog eggs everywhere. And they were like these really big clumps of fish eggs, or frog eggs, all, together. So I got a fishing net that year, and my dad and I would go there, and I would bring this big glass jar with me, and then I would scoop up some of the frog eggs, put them in a jar, and I would bring them back home until I did that for a good few years, I think, every year when it was the season. But that was not the only thing I caught. I also caught some turtles that people dumped into the pond, I remember. I also caught some small fish with my fishing net. Most of them I just released. When I was a kid, I wanted to investigate everything. So I would catch the animal, I would look at it, and then I would throw it back. That's, I think, where a big part of my inspiration of drawing came from when I was a kid, because I was always drawing fish. Back in the day, when I was little, using a fax machine was still a thing. I know that some companies still use fax machines nowadays, but back in the day it was a lot more common. So these faxing machines had these big paper rolls in it, like how you have the small rolls for receipts in the stores in a debit machine, but then a big roll. And I used to use that as drawing paper. So I would pull out the roll, I would have a really big piece of paper, and then I would draw the water line, and then I would draw plants and little stones and fish. That's how my fishing, or how my drawing skills started. But yeah, anyways, so I would catch these frog eggs until they would turn into, how do you call those again in English? The frog, when it comes out of the egg, is this like little black fish, and then when it evolves, it gets back legs, and then it gets front legs, and then it loses its tail. Oh man, I do actually know what the word is, but I can't come up with it at the time. So if you know what it is, let me know down below. It's something with bull, temple, dimple. I can't remember. So I had now a second aquarium in my house with these little baby frogs, and baby frogs don't live in the water. I mean, they kind of do, but they belong in a terrarium. So I would have this little piece of layer of water in my aquarium with little pieces of wood and moss and little plants, and I would try to catch flies, and then I would feed it to them, and water larvae too. So by the time that they were big enough, I would release them into the wild, and I did this for a good few years. fish. You know those beautiful moonfish? They look like a discus. It's like round with a tail. And then the upper fin is very long and the top fin is very long as well. So I got those, but they kept dying. And my dad did not actually know that they were tropical fish, and tropical fish need a heat element, a heater, a thermometer in the water, and they also need light. And that's the reason why my fish kept dying. So when I was younger, and that kept happening, my fish kept dying, I thought I was doomed. I remember when I was younger, I told my dad, I don't think I'll ever be able to keep any fish alive. And that's when I switched to turtles. I got 2 little baby turtles at the store, not knowing that those things become 80 years old and that they become about that big, the ones that I had. But yeah, once those became too big, and they're a lot of work, they are pretty smelly animals and you have to clean the aquarium often, I decided to get back to fish, and by this time I was probably in my early teens. But again, most of the fish that I had kept dying and it just did not work out. And by the time I reached grade 8, I had a lot of fishing experiences in canals. I caught lots of frogs, lots of frog eggs, lots of baby fish with my fishing net, and a lot of salamanders, and I had turtles. By the time I reached my early teens, my dad finally gave me a rabbit. I called her Ronya, and she became about 9 to 10 years old. That's another video, though. I actually did a video about how I got into animals in general. I will post a link down below this video, in case if you're interested to hear the story that doesn't go into depth about fish and aquarium necessarily. So, by the time that I reached grade 8, my elementary school that I went to had a really big aquarium, and they wanted to get rid of all their fish that they had, guppies in particular. And they were about to throw them into the sewers on the street until I told them, like, hey, can I take them? So there I went again. I had my little bucket with my fish, and I walked home, and I came home with it must have been at least 30 guppies, pregnant ones, baby fish, the whole shebang. So my dad couldn't say no, obviously. What was he gonna do? Tell me, no, you can't have them, get rid of them. He didn't do that, so that's how I ended up with an entire aquarium full of guppies. And since they're not very high demanding fish, at least not the ones that I had, they weren't show guppies, nothing too fancy. But yeah, so I ended up with an aquarium again with guppies. All the other fish that I owned, like the fish that I caught in the canals, I always ended up releasing them because they were too stressed out. Those fish are not meant to be put in the aquarium. I mean, in general, it's kind of a little bit controversial, I think, because some people are okay with animals in a tank or an aquarium, and other people aren't. So I released most of the fish that I caught in the canals and in the lake, the pond. And then a little time jump back in time. When I was around 12, 13 years old, my dad and I went to Ireland together with his partner at the time, and she had 2 daughters. And we did quite a bit of fishing there as well. national park, I think you call it. It's called the Beast Boss. I mentioned this in one of my earlier videos, I think, as well. And this, the Beast Boss, is an area where a lot of people would hide in the Second World War. And everything, the water is very shallow, and you have these massive, massive fish there. Like, my dad and I would rent a boat, and we would take our fishing stuff and our fishing rods on the boat, and then we would dock somewhere in the middle of this national park where the water was like, I don't know, like very, very, like not deep, maybe knee height deep. And while we were going through the canals that were attached to the big canal, you had like all these little creeks in between where you could go with the boats. With a motorboat, you would see these massive fish, and I'm talking about massive fish. Like, these fish were so big that I didn't even dare catching them. Like, sometimes I noticed when I became older, I got kind of scared of them because they are so big. And I had this other bad experience when I was in my early teens. I was fishing again in the canal. It was just me by myself, 4 minutes away from our house. And I caught this massive carp in the canal. It was a huge fish. And because I had my fishing rod on the edge of the canal, my fishing rod got pulled in, and luckily luckily the fishing rod was actually floating, and I had my fishing net with me, so I just followed the stream of the water, and I was able to, follow my fishing rod, and then eventually I managed to pull it back out with my fishing net, but the massive carp was still attached, and because it was so big and I was relatively small, I was so scared to take it off. I was like, what do I do? Eventually I think I ended up asking someone for help that was also fishing, and the person helped me to get the fish off the hook. But man, that was so scary when I was younger. And yeah, that was probably the story from like my teens. And then when I was in my early 20s, I started an animal care study in which I specialized myself in freshwater aquariums. I was kind of done fishing, also because I didn't really have anybody to do it with. So when I was around, like beginning 20s, I got back into tropical aquariums. So I was working at a small petting zoo at the time, and a lot of people, if they didn't want to have their animals, they would donate them to us. They would give the animals to us, including fish and aquariums and all the supplies that come with it. Aquariums is a very popular hobby in the Netherlands. Very popular. It's nothing like it is here in Canada, where it's relatively rare to see someone with an aquarium. But over there, a lot of people get into fish, then realize it's not for them, and get rid of their stuff again. So I became somewhat of a shelter for fish, abandoned fish. So I would browse. When I wasn't working, I would browse this website called marketplace.nl, very similar to Kijiji, and I would pick up these free aquariums, and often they came with fish as well, and all the supplies that come with it. So I ended up with 3 aquariums, 48 gallons, and I had 3 10-gallon aquariums, and then I had a smaller one of like 8 gallons. And many of the fish I didn't really choose to have, other than, I wanted to rehome them, so I would keep them with me temporarily, and then I would find a good home for them and resell them. So I ended up with these huge amount of aquariums. I had like 7 aquariums in my apartment. And one of my aquariums that I had on my desk, I decided to keep shrimp in. This is when I was around 20 years old. And these shrimp were called cherry shrimp, which I also got from Marketplace. So I ended up getting like 10 shrimp. And then eventually I ended up with like 80 shrimp or something like that. It was crazy. So I rehomed all of the fish pretty much. I got rid of my aquariums, and then, as many of you know, and as many of you might not know, is that I moved to Canada. Also, during my animal care study, I had an internship in a seedwater aquarium store where I used to unpack these really expensive pieces of coral. I'm talking about like 2,000 euros worth of, coral, which is close to the same amount in US dollar, a little bit more. In Canadian, that is around $3,100. And I would unpack all of these things and put them into water, and I would clean all of the aquariums and learn so much about sea fish and corals and the beauty that the ocean holds. It was really amazing. And then, after my animal care study, I started making ASMR videos, and I still had some of my aquariums that I sold, because in August 2013 I moved to Canada, and pretty quickly after I moved here I picked up my hobby with fish again, except for everything is a lot more expensive, a lot more rare, and just in general harder to find here. So I ended up with a 48-gallon, is it 48 gallons? I think it is. A 48-gallon fluval aquarium, which we still have. And I have some red tetras in there, together with some platies and a pleco. And what else do I have? Some danios in there. And ever since we moved to this house, which is 2.5 years ago, I started to expand my hobby a little bit again. And now I have a very healthy colony of cherry shrimp, the same ones I had in the Netherlands. I started out with 12, and I have around 70 to 80 cherry shrimp at the moment in a 10-gallon aquarium. And then I have a 5-gallon aquarium, and then 2 8-gallon aquariums. And in my 8-gallon aquarium, I have a few guppies that I'm breeding. And in my other 8-gallon aquarium, I have all the baby fish from the platies that are in the big aquarium downstairs. And all these smaller tanks are in my workroom upstairs. So they're right next to my desk. One aquarium is actually on my desk, and I love looking at them and feeding them and just observing them in general. So that was my story for today. I think I will do a room tour soon as well, since that was requested, or a house tour rather, and then I can show you all the aquariums that I have. I would like to send you a lot of love and a lot of positivity. And thank you so much for watching. And I think my next video will be a roleplay again that has been requested. So yeah, I hope I'll see you then again. And I would like to wish you a good night. And yeah, until next time.